The president of South Korea addressed the nation with a grave declaration, announcing the end of the world following the impact of a zombie-inducing asteroid on Japan, which transformed its population into bloodthirsty flesh-eaters. The apocalypse had officially begun, triggering widespread panic and chaos. Citizens were gripped with fear, unsure of what to do or where to find safety. Amidst the turmoil, however, one individual was more than prepared. He possessed a personal safe shelter located in another dimension and had been anticipating the opportunity to confront the zombie horde. That individual was the main character, Zhang Ho. Several months prior, Zhang Ho and his companions had immersed themselves in Asura, a virtual survival game notorious for its extreme difficulty. The gameplay was so intensely challenging and demanding that it drove the majority of players to abandon it entirely. Seon Ho's gaming party ultimately betrayed him by ceasing to log in, leaving him to continue alone. He persevered, playing and streaming the game solo, confronting a vast array of monstrous enemies and eventually rising to become one of the most skilled players. Growing disillusioned with this virtual existence, he eventually removed his headgear and deleted all his public streaming content. Zhang Ho shifted his focus to his professional life as a chef and developed a friendly rapport with a charming girl who frequented his establishment. In a moment of whimsy, he decided to chant status window aloud in the real world. To his absolute astonishment, a tangible blue screen materialized before his eyes, displaying his character statistics. These stats were identical to those from his gaming profile, with one notable addition: a new ability labeled Private Portal. When he tested this ability, a human-sized warp gate shimmered into existence. His mind reeled as he grappled with the perilous implications of this discovery, for if the game's mechanics were real, then the apocalyptic meteor event from its narrative was also a genuine threat. While searching the internet in a frantic state, Ho discovered an article confirming the impending impact of an asteroid. He struggled to accept that the fictional events of the game were manifesting in reality. He stared at the portal, the confirmation of the asteroid's arrival now coupled with this impossible gateway, solidifying that something was catastrophically wrong. He hesitated, debating whether he should actually venture through the portal. With no supernatural powers, no definitive strategy, and limited financial resources, he contemplated taking that step. After a period of reflection, he seized the nearest ladle. He carefully inserted the ladle into the portal to sample the environment on the other side. Upon retrieving it with a scoop of soil, he concluded that the destination was not one of the game's labyrinthine stages, which was reassuring, but he also began to suspect the portal might simply transport him to an isolated location on Earth. After packing a bag for the journey, he finally compelled himself to step through. In the subsequent moment, he traversed the portal and was met with the unspoiled beauty of the other side. The scenery was entirely natural, with no trace of urbanization. His immediate observation was the significantly colder climate. With no cellular signal on his phone, he deduced he was in an extremely remote location, inaccessible to others. Recognizing his potential isolation, he used a permanent marker to inscribe the number 0 on a tree trunk, an intelligent precaution to maintain his bearings during exploration. He commenced walking, but the journey proved arduous. The forest seemed boundless, offering no landmarks. Just as he was yearning for a significant event, a creature locked its gaze on him from a short distance. It immediately pounced with predatory intent, terrifying the protagonist. Fortunately, it was merely a majestic valley deer and not a monstrous entity. A critical detail was that the system interface automatically identified this unique creature for him, providing definitive proof that this realm was distinct from Earth. The deer observed him briefly before sprinting away without incident. The protagonist found its abrupt departure peculiar. He was relieved it was not hostile, but understood that encountering aggressive creatures like bloodthirsty monkeys or boars would be far more dangerous. Another significant detail was that the valley deer was not a creature that existed within the Asura game. Shortly after his arrival, he developed a strong intuition that this world was fundamentally connected to concepts of survival and its core mechanics. Drawing a blade, he advanced cautiously, mentally preparing for any sudden threats. Up to this point, he had been in denial about the impending disaster destined to eradicate humanity. However, just as he was considering abandoning his search, he discovered it. His attention was captured by a glowing sun apple, a mystical fruit which he harvested from a tree. He first questioned the safety of consuming it, then took a decisive bite, experiencing an instantaneous transformation. The system notified him of his restored stamina, and his body was enveloped in a yellow luminescence. The effects were identical to the sun apple juice consumable from the game, serving as absolute confirmation. The protagonist was now convinced of the approaching catastrophe. He also noted his proximity to goblin excrement, signaling the need for increased vigilance. Siongo released an anxious sigh, attempting to bolster his resolve. Despite his previous skepticism, he now accepted that the end of the world was imminent. After experiencing the portal's effects, he exited and returned to his original world. There, Zhang Ho began devising a comprehensive plan. He was determined to be fully prepared for the apocalypse. His first action was to compile and archive all his recorded gameplay footage from Asura onto a personal hard drive. Fortunately, he had streamed all his sessions, making the data readily available, though he had never anticipated such a practical application for it. News reports confirmed the asteroid's trajectory. The devastation of Japan was scheduled to commence in 32 days, coinciding with the start of the apocalypse. He dedicated this period to preparation, aware that the game was plagued with punishing mechanics. The most insane and problematic of these was a phenomenon dubbed Iron Death Disease. This event caused the rapid corrosion and utter destruction of all metal on Earth. Buildings crumbled into dust, a collapse that subsequently facilitated the swarming zombie hordes. With the annihilation of metal, the backbone of modern society, humanity was thrust back into a primitive state. In the game, the Iron Death Disease eventually receded, but its primary terror was its duration, a full calendar year. However, this impending disaster held little fear for the protagonist, who had a secure means of accessing his private portal via his new ability. He strongly suspected that the disease would be unable to cross the dimensional boundary. Finalizing his analysis, he liquidated all his savings to purchase top-tier survival equipment. The protagonist was essentially preparing for a real-life, high-stakes survival scenario, and he acquired all necessary gear and provision. During nighttime reviews of online forums, Zhang Ho felt a sense of disillusionment observing the few individuals who were already exploiting their awakened abilities for criminal activities and hedonistic pursuits. The following morning, he procured additional supplies for his mission. On his return trip, he impulsively purchased a hunting bow. During these errands, he confronted a moment of doubt, wondering if he was overanalyzing the situation and acting impetuously. Nonetheless, he consoled himself with the thought that he could potentially recoup his financial losses even if his fears proved unfounded. With his morning tasks complete, he returned to his shop and posted a closed sign. Zion Ho was deep in thought when a familiar voice interrupted him. It was his regular customer, the girl whose demeanor reminded him of a character from a popular series. She expressed concern about the shop's closure. He explained it was for remodeling, which led her to speculate if he had come into a large sum of money. Zhang Ho attempted to curtly end the conversation by citing work obligations, but she halted him, attempting to pose a question. The girl became flustered, failed to articulate her request, and ultimately departed. Seon Ho was curious about her intent, but despite the opportunity to inquire further, he returned to his preparation. Internally, he vowed to maintain serious focus on the critical tasks at hand. He resolved to ignore distractions and fully commit to his goal. He commanded, "Open the portal." Analyzing his inherent playstyle, he could be described as a tactician or a strategist, a player who relied on careful planning and clever tactics to overcome challenges. He was not an inherently powerful fighter and depended primarily on his intellect. The reason for this was rooted in Sura's complex stat system, where attributes were not automatically granted upon leveling up, but had to be earned through active hunting and exploration. Presently, the protagonist was in the other realm, diligently practicing with his bow. Having no prior training, he resorted to online video tutorials for instruction. Ex-Gungo assumed the correct stance, took careful aim, and released the arrow. A flash of his in-game muscle memory seemed to guide the action. The arrow sailed through the air and struck the target. He was momentarily amazed by his apparent natural talent, even entertaining the notion that he might be a chosen. However, the soreness in his hand quickly revealed his true limitation, a lack of physical strength. This realization reinforced his decision to focus on physical training to improve his endurance. With the foundational preparations complete, he proceeded to the next phase. His immediate objectives were twofold. First, to devise an effective method for hunting monsters, and second, to construct a secure base of operations for storing supply. At that moment, however, he lacked powerful weapons and had not yet established a stockpile, as those deliveries were still pending. In the interim, he foraged for golden apples, marveling at his fortune in locating them. By marking their locations, he continued his self-directed training for the impending apocalypse. This propensity for early and thorough preparation was the very trait that had ensured his prolonged survival in the game of Sura. While surveying his surroundings, Zhang Ho encountered goblin dropping. He had been actively searching for this sign for a specific purpose. Goblins are inherently social creatures that operate in group. The presence of a single, isolated pile of waste strongly suggested a lone goblin was in the vicinity. He inspected the excrement and deduced that the goblin was likely an outcast from its tribe. Zhang Ho identified this solitary creature as his ideal first target. He was determined to hunt it down successfully. As night fell, his pursuit of the lone goblin continued. The sound of wolves in the distance indicated his proximity to a valley. Finally, he sighted the very goblin he was tracking. Seon Ho concealed himself behind a tree, confirming that the creature's appearance was identical to its in-game counterpart. Goblins are considered the lowest tier of monsters, typically armed with spears or poisonous darts and notorious for mutilating and torturing their victim. This was the precise reason the protagonist had selected a long-range weapon for his initial hunt. From his observations, the goblin appeared elderly and was in poor physical condition. It did not seem to be carrying any weapon. Therefore, Song Ho swiftly drew his bow. He understood that maintaining composure was key to a successful kill. Upon releasing the bowstring, the arrow flew and embedded itself in the goblin's arm. Seong Ho had aimed for its head, but he was nevertheless satisfied with hitting his target. Utilizing his initial advantage, he prepared to take a second shot with his bow. However, the goblin reacted with surprising speed, hurling a stone with such force that it knocked the weapon cleanly from his hands. Sean Ho realized with a jolt that he was not facing a simple foe but a mature and battle-hardened goblin. With their primary ranged options gone, both combatants drew their blades, readying for close-quarters combat. Sean-ho gripped his knife and lunged forward, attempting to slash the goblin's side. The experienced creature dodged nimbly and retaliated with a sharp, painful smack to the protagonist's kneecap. The blow sent him stumbling, but he used the momentum to tackle the goblin, forcing it onto its back and pinning it to the ground. Here, he finally had a clear upper hand. Xiangho raised his blade and plunged it deep into the creature's chest. The goblin let out a final guttural scream of pain before the light faded from its eyes. The first kill was successful, and the system awarded him 2 points for the feat. He could scarcely believe what he had just accomplished. Scanning his immediate environment for resources, he discovered guaca powder and vegetable oil nearby. In the game's mechanics, combining these 2 items resulted in a healing ointment, but his first priority was to dispose of the corpse. Leaving the goblin to rot in the open was far too dangerous. Its tribe could find the body and use it to track him down. Furthermore, allowing it to decompose naturally risked it transforming into a bone creeper, a far more dangerous undead entity. As he contemplated this, Zhang Ho noticed a pair of red trouts in a nearby stream. His heart trembled with a sudden, primal fear. The moment he averted his gaze from the water, he discovered the creepiest owlbear monster staring down at him from a ledge above. This terrifying encounter triggered a flashback to Zhang Ho's past experiences within the game. During his streaming sessions, he had compiled extensive material and insights. Some of his chat members had even donated money, encouraging him to delve into the game's deepest secrets. Xiang Ho had gotten to the bottom of many mechanics, previously describing his experiences with goblins and other low-tier monsters like kobolds. He knew that avoiding the creation of a bone creeper was essential. He also recalled that this forest housed 2 of the game's most dangerous creatures, werewolves and owlbears. Owlbears were fiercely territorial, and their presence ironically created a form of balance within the local monster ecosystem. Remembering that era of streaming brought a wave of warmth to his heart. There was one dedicated viewer, Bulungman, who was always supportive. Others were chill but eccentric, like Barking Dog Dude, who incessantly typed woof in the chat. Strangely, Seon Ho wondered why these happy memories were surfacing now. Was it because he was staring into the face of literal horror, a creature poised to end his life? Zhang Ho refused to accept this grim reality. It was as if the memories were a subconscious command to concentrate. He used every fleeting second to devise a plan. He already knew that owlbears were vicious predators that tore apart anything in their path. The fact that this one was standing still, observing him, implied it wasn't currently driven by ravenous hunger. A more pressing concern was that he had inadvertently invaded the territory of the red trouts, a detail that seemed to be agitating the area. Weighing all these factors, Zhang Ho concluded there was likely only one way to escape this nightmare. He turned his feet, mentally reminding himself that he still possessed the strategic mind of a top player, even if his current body was the lowly physique of Kang Ho. Gritting his teeth, he let out a defiant shout, challenging the monster, a final declaration of his will to survive. The creature's eyes locked onto him, and it initiated its terrorizing first attack. Owlbears were exceptionally skilled at hunting at night, but their main weakness was a vulnerability to direct, bright light. Having memorized its attack patterns from the game, Xiang Ho knew his execution had to be flawless to save his life. He matched the timing of the beast's lunge, expertly evading its powerful slash. Simultaneously, he formulated a plan to create a disorienting light effect. Bursting forward with a surge of adrenaline, he ran up the creature's massive arm and in a final desperate move, whipped out a high-powered flashlight, blinding its eyes at point-blank range. The effect was profoundly traumatizing for the light-sensitive predator, leaving it completely disoriented and temporarily helpless. The next scene cuts to our protagonist waking up in his own bed, his body incredibly sore as his alarm clock rang. He had passed out immediately upon returning home after his frantic escape. His last memory was of running for his life after successfully blinding the monster. As sheer luck would have it, he had run into an owlbear immediately after dealing with the goblin. The thought of facing such a creature again was unbearable. He tried to get up to eat something, but his legs gave way, and he kissed the floor with a heavy thud, realizing they were utterly annihilated from the previous night's cardio. Luckily, he still had those golden apples from the other realm. Sean Ho grabbed one and took a bite, instantly feeling his stamina rejuvenate. Finally feeling more alive, he decided it was time to properly satiate his hunger. After tidying himself up, he ended up running into Tu Chahan once more. She was at a different restaurant and had coincidentally spotted him. Xiang Ho wasn't actively seeking company, but she sat down with him, explaining that she liked having a meal buddy. Mikkyong then hurriedly asked him if he had tried opening the status window. Her enthusiastic attitude made Yang Ho realize this must have been the topic she wanted to discuss during their last interrupted conversation. Mikkyong showed him news articles on her phone, assuring him that the awakenings were real and that some players were already using their powers to steal from others. Zion Ho was a little startled by her directness. He lied in response, claiming that nothing had happened when he tried. The truth was, Zhang Ho felt he was doing the right thing by keeping his abilities secret. His trait was strategic, not combat-focused, a card he could play to his greatest advantage if kept hidden. His personal safety wasn't even guaranteed yet, and revealing his hand to the woman in the red dress, in this case her, could end very badly for him. It was a smart play. However, he was intrigued by Mikkyong's intense interest in the topic of awakening. Then came a surprise from her. She hesitated and admitted to having told a lie herself. Seong Ho, assuming her intentions were good, assured her she didn't have to explain anything immediately. He encouraged her by saying there was still time, and he headed home shortly after their conversation concluded. Finally, his delivery of packages arrived. The supplies he had ordered were here, and he no longer needed to worry about being under-equipped. He moved most of the items up to his rooftop, keeping only the most essential supplies on the second floor. During his preparation work, he selected a whole suite of items necessary for the day's mission, including gas masks, protective suits, and other specialized equipment. For his upcoming mission, our protagonist intended to find a proper location to use as a permanent hideout in the other world. Building a secure home base was necessary, which was the primary reason he had acquired an axe. Passing through the portal, Zion Ho followed his first solid lead. He accidentally discovered a goblin cave while previously tracking the old goblin. Recalling its location, he traveled back to the exact spot and confirmed its existence. It was a conveniently concealed spot, seemingly perfect for his plan. However, his first task was to verify what kind of monsters currently inhabited. Soon Ho scanned the environment and found the tiny, distinctive footprints of kobolds passing by the entrance. This was actually a discovery worth celebrating, as these creatures were not particularly troublesome. Ho had come prepared with a plan to deal with any low-level monsters, so he had nothing to worry about. A key piece of information was that kobolds are nocturnal creatures. They were currently asleep inside, so our protagonist's plan was to smoke them out. First, he gathered a large bundle of firewood by cutting branches. Afterwards, he placed the collected pile strategically at the cave's entrance. The next step was to spill gasoline all over it. Seon Ho thought he was going to clear this mission with no trouble, as all he had to do now was light the fire. But then he shockingly heard noises from within. The kobolds had been roused from their slumber and immediately locked eyes on their next potential meal. Xiang Ho merely offered them a gentle greeting before whipping his axe into action, lunging forward. In a simple, powerful swing, he slashed two of the monsters across their necks, killing them instantly. The reason they went down so easily was their lingering drowsiness. Thanks to these consecutive kills, the system awarded him with a level increase and 4 additional stat points. Next, Sean Ho tossed a lighter onto the gasoline-soaked firewood. Shortly after, thick, noxious fumes began to pour into the cave. In the Asura game, low-level monsters like kobolds had one glaring weakness. They were highly vulnerable to smoke and fume. Our boy waited outside, protected by a gas mask. While he could have tried to fight them directly, this method was far more effective for clearing the cave and minimizing risk. The slumbering kobolds still inside frantically woke up and scrambled outside to save themselves. Xiang Ho had intentionally chosen this strategy to weaken them and create confusion during their escape. The moment they stepped outside, disoriented and choking, his objective was to capitalize on their weakened state and kill them swiftly. Though he expected at least 5 to emerge, Zhang Ho was stunned that only 4 did, which was different from their usual group size of 7. Aiming at one of the fleeing kobolds, Xiang Ho slaughtered it, declaring that only 3 now remained. The remaining 3 rushed him, attempting a desperate, uncoordinated attack. But our boy was ready with his axe, swinging the weapon with practiced efficiency and taking them down one by one. Another kobold tried to blindside him, but our protagonist used a surprising tactic, a potent spray that disoriented the creature. Before it could recover, Seon Ho swiftly decapitated. With just one final opponent left, our boy stared down their leader, who was fidgeting in sheer fear. He had become the hunter and declared their end, promising to make good use of their former hideout. The bloodbath ended at last, leaving Seong Ho fatigued on the ground. His lack of stamina was his real drawback, even though the enemies themselves had been easy to beat. The system's stats, interestingly, function no differently than in the game. Even the debuff section, showing an exhaustion state that prevented stat increases after a level up, was identical. Still, leveling up would eventually unlock shop items for him, which was a positive development. The most convenient outcome was that he now had a private space of his own. But as much as our boy wanted a clean environment, he found himself deeply disappointed by the filth and mess the kobolds had left inside. With the hideout secured, a massive cleaning operation began. He had to clear out so much goblin-made refuse that he grew tired of the chore. Cleaning up after the fight felt like a pain in the ass. Seho cursed the shitty creatures for living in such squalor. Still, he had nothing to worry about anymore now that he had a new home base. Sean Ho returned to his original world every time he needed to dispose of the trash, a clear benefit, even if the cleaning process was incredibly time-consuming. One thing that surprised him most was discovering how seamlessly items could be used between dimensions. He used a pipe from his world and activated a water source in the other, astonishing himself with how well the connection worked. Hours of effort later, the place was finally glittering with cleanliness. His next tasks were to clear the remaining blood stains and work on pouring a concrete floor to make storing supplies easier. He began to think about the complications of mixing mortar and using sandwich panels for further fortification. But the one good thing about this otherwise shitty cave was that it was full of luminous stones and ignition stone. These were considered newbie-tier resources in the game, but the cave was so densely packed with them that it represented a significant boon. Sean Ho now had a compelling reason to properly mine this place once the initial construction was complete. The following day, our protagonist was at the absolute edge of his physical limits. He was working so relentlessly that his entire body ached. Checking his arm, he surprised himself with the number of minor cuts and abrasions he had endured. The various collected items from the other realm rested on a table beside him. Sean Ho wondered if he should use this as an opportunity to finally make the healing ointment. The method was simple. Combine guaca powder and vegetable oil in an equal ratio, stir thoroughly, and a low-level healing ointment was the result. Thanks to his background as a chef, the process was intuitive. Just applying the homemade salve to his arm felt like a tangible step forward. However, he was troubled by the realization that he might have to repeatedly repeatedly manufacture this basic remedy. He contemplated the more fundamental solution of raising his stats, but acknowledged the grim irony that he was risking his life so intensely he could die before the actual apocalypse even arrived. While the thought was almost darkly humorous, Xiang Ho didn't want to take the risk and began considering a more convenient weapon like a gun. Suddenly, a thought clicked in his head. There was definitely something from the game's lore he could use. This was separated from the main storyline, existing as background material. But the critical question was whether that background lore would even apply to the incoming real-world apocalypse. Utilizing that information, Xiang Ho focused his thoughts, hoping the backstory events would occur because they could benefit him in unimaginable ways. With a new plan formulated, he went up to the rooftop to gather the construction materials he had ordered. Opening the portal gate, he began tossing the heavy bags through to the other side one by one. After moving the bulk of the materials, he went back down to the first floor to retrieve a final pile of packages, only to have the same girl pop up again. Xiang Ho was starting to wonder if she was becoming a little too comfortable around him. He addressed it directly, causing her some embarrassment. He assured her he was just exceptionally busy with his remodeling work, and she seemed to accept his explanation. What surprised her was that he had missed his regular haircut, which he scheduled every 3 months. Xiang Ho remembered the appointment, and realizing a neat haircut would be practical for his upcoming explorations, decided to drop what he was doing and accompany her to her shop. There, our protagonist was starting to look like a Korean version of a certain bald internet personality. He ordered her to shave it all off, embracing the buzz cut. Surprised by the request, she decided to carry it out. What intrigued her was how Xiang Ho's shoulders had noticeably broadened. He told her he had been working out, while Mikgong steered the conversation toward the status window and its relation to the game Survival Life. She explained that awakeners were people who had played the game at least once. All this time, Xiang Ho played dumb, agreeing with everything but curiously asking about her source for this information. Suddenly, a tattooed man entered the shop, announcing he was there with new intel. Hilariously, this guy named Hack had once competed against Seiho in a singing competition. Our boy was instantly pissed that this clown was her supposed source of information. The blonde-haired man told her that a certain player had deleted all his streams and was hoarding information for himself. The moment became intensely awkward when Hack announced he was actively trying to dox that player's real-life location. Xiang Ho, feigning ignorance, asked who this mystery person was. Hack name-dropped Kimbab Jojo, which was Xiang Ho's old username. This complicated things immensely as our protagonist now knew people were genuinely hunting for him. Hack pressured the young lady to be bold and join his team. Xiang Ho found the whole situation stupid. His only reason for deleting the videos was simple disappointment. He'd never considered the personal benefits of hoarding knowledge. This punk was a know-it-all wannabe who talked a big game. He even cursed the player he was hunting for not publicly archiving his streams, completely unaware that his target was sitting right in front of him. Xiang Ho wondered if this was the general sentiment of the entire community, which made him question if he should change course and share information after all. Our protagonist personally got up to confront Hack, scolding him for interrupting his haircut. Hack tried to play the tough guy, but Xiang Ho glared at him with murderous intent, ordering him to get lost unless he wanted to be humiliated again. Intimidated, the punk exited the shop as the stylist bid him a nervous farewell. Mikgong felt visibly relieved. Seeing her distress, our boy asked for her phone number, rationalizing that the guy was a genuine clown who could potentially threaten her safety. Back at home, our boy was now sporting a clean, model-like look with his new buzz cut. His first action was to focus on his username and look up related information on the forum. What he found was alarming. The forum was flooded with curses and vitriol directed squarely at him. He was receiving endless hate until he eventually found Hack's username. The clown used a nickname despite having his verification publicly accessible. His entire page was a shrine of negative commentary about our protagonist, a true hater in spirit, body, and soul. Xiang Ho switched off his computer. It was the only appropriate reaction. He wasn't mentally shattered, just profoundly disappointed. But then a strange sense of calm washed over him as he commanded the portal open. He spent the next 2 days relentlessly refining his hideout, focusing on mining and construction. The pickaxe was invaluable, and he carefully spread mortar mixed with water, smoothing it evenly each day. With the work finished for the moment, he stepped outside, waiting for the mortar to dry. Under the lonely moon, Xiang Ho realized he had to respond to this injustice and cruelty. He wasn't a hero and wasn't looking for a grandiose purpose. His ultimate goal was pure survival. That was all that mattered as long as he was winning. Having solidified his resolution, he turned around and was immediately frightened. A bone creeper was clanking directly toward him. Xiang Ho, already pissed off, had finally found a target for his pent-up frustration. A loud explosion followed, engulfing the immediate area in flames. The next time our boy woke up, he was covered in scratches and disoriented, unsure of what had just happened. Then he remembered the bone creeper. The part boggling his mind was how he had survived a point-blank explosion. The answer came to him. The moment he spotted the creature, he knew it was about to detonate. He had run for his life, but the blast wave still caught him, knocking him unconscious without killing him. However, that desperate move had cost him. Xiang Ho was full of sharp bone fragments stabbed into his right side. Mustering the little strength he had left, he called up his status window for help. The system's stats showed a decrease due to his critical condition, but thanks to the creature's destruction, he was awarded points for its defeat. A ringing headache began to dominate his senses. Expending his final ounce of energy, he commanded the portal to open. In the next scene, his first priority was treating his wounds. This involved the painful process of removing the embedded bone fragments. It was an agonizing ordeal. The homemade ointment worked its wonders, helping to stop the bleeding. After bandaging the wounds and checking his condition, Zhang Ho succumbed to exhaustion and fell unconscious. He had reached his limit. The following morning, dawn broke and our boy was awake. He felt on the verge of death. His immediate worry was to check if his wounds were healing, so he summoned the status window. The system indicated he was stabilizing, which was good news. He got up and pondered the pressing question: how had a damn bone creeper found him in the first place? The forest was vast, so it wasn't impossible for creatures to emerge unexpectedly, but it alarmed him enough to focus on honing his perception stat, which would boost his detection ability. In the game, the only ways to increase such stats were by using stat points acquired through hunting and exploration, or by using equipment that provided stat boost. The problem was, Asura was a brutally difficult game. Obtaining simple stat items often meant facing monsters far beyond your level, a hellish task. Defeating monsters could also unlock skills, with higher-level beasts dropping them based on specific conditions, though not every skill suited every player. Now Shan Ho wondered about a surefire way to acquire stat-boosting items. He decided to revisit the background stories he had explored in the game. These lore events took place before the asteroids fall in the game's timeline. This meant that visiting the real-world locations of these stories could potentially yield special items before the apocalypse even began. But that was just a theory. Shan Ho knew that fighting stronger monsters was an inevitable part of this path. He spent the next few hours reading up on past information and learned about 3 important locations from the background stories: the Russian ship, the Hobgoblin, and the Jerry Mountain Orc incident, which was the most time-sensitive. According to his footage, the orc was discovered on the 26th, so he had to depart on the 25th to find it early. With his next mission in sight, our boy grabbed his phone and saw that Mikkyong was calling him late at night. In the next scene, the two met at a cafe. She asked about his condition, questioning why he was wearing a long-sleeve shirt in the summer heat. Bro had to hide his wounds and realized this woman was far more observant than she seemed. She thought he was bothered by the incident at the shop, but Song Ho denied it. She expressed how scared she had felt. Shan Ho reminded her of an incident last winter where the same guy had caused trouble using an illegally modified tow truck and had fought people. Long story short, he was a shitty human being. Mikkyong was stunned by this news, having had no prior intel on him, but our boy begged her to stay away. Sing Ho then directly asked the reason she had invited him out. The young lady leaned close and revealed in a whisper that she was actually awakened. Seong Ho was shocked, having no idea why she would reveal such sensitive information. Playing along naturally, he acted jealous that he hadn't been so lucky. She felt bad for having lied to him before, but he assured her it was okay. Concluding their meeting, he got up to leave. Seong Ho was quietly happy to be entrusted with that secret and admitted to himself that he felt better because of her honesty. Before leaving the cafe, he intentionally left a small clue, stating his newfound interest in the survival life game and his full intention to study it thoroughly. Returning home, Shan Ho admitted to himself that he genuinely felt happy to have found someone like Mikkyong, a person with good character. He proceeded to check online stores and ended up purchasing several advanced drones and even rented a car for better navigation and transport. After securing his new assets, he headed straight to bed to recover his strength for the demanding day ahead. The next day arrived as scheduled. The moment dawn broke, he began meticulously preparing materials specifically for hunting the orcs. Within his home base, he carefully crushed and refined the volatile ignition stone. This process required precise handling, as an incorrect strike could cause them to flare up dangerously. Next, he turned his attention to the luminous stone. Mining them was a blinding task due to their intense light emission, but the payoff was worth the effort, so he persevered. After grinding both types of stones into a fine powder, he had completed the primary components for his plan. The next phase of his preparation involved creating a compound. He mixed sugar, gasoline, and organic solvents together. The final, crucial ingredient was a hardening agent designed to solidify the ignition stone powder. Thanks to his private portal's ability to maintain flexible coordinates between dimensions, he could easily set up a dedicated work desk for this dangerous alchemy without any logistical difficulty. Before departing, he securely wrapped all his luggage and specialized equipment, loading everything into the rented car. Satisfied with his purchases and preparations, Seiho began the drive to Juri Mountain, his objective clear: to hunt and kill the orcs. He arrived at the Yungri campground parking lot just before midnight, using the remaining time for mental image training and ensuring all his gear was safe and accessible. When the clock struck midnight, he initiated a full-scale search of the area. 2 hours later, the weather had deteriorated significantly. The rain was pouring down and a thick mist limited his visibility. He wondered where the orcs were supposed to emerge from the earth, having already scouted the perimeter of the campground. He began to think that the precursor phenomena from the game didn't occur in real life, but his thoughts were abruptly severed by a loud, guttural roar. Panicking, he looked behind him. From the direction of the sound, a dark, shadowy figure was approaching. Our protagonist realized it was an orc, and not an ordinary one. It was a red orc subspecies, which guaranteed a skill drop upon its defeat. Kang Ho tried to calm his nerves and fired a firecracker into the air. Everything proceeded according to his strategy. He could definitely capture it. The method he had devised to deal with orcs was straightforward. The first step was to use the creature's innate aggression, drawing its attention with the flare and noise. When the orc became distracted by the firecracker and began to attack the source with its axe, that was the critical moment to seize the opportunity. He needed to aim at the orc, instantly open a portal directly in front of it, grab a flashbang, and activate it. The intense light would blind the orc for approximately 20 seconds, creating a race against time. The plan was to then destroy the orc's muscles, which would be weakened by the disorientation, drastically reducing its mobility. The orc, enraged, screamed and swung its massive axe in a wide arc, intending to crush our hero. But our protagonist was swift. He bent down at the last possible moment, dodging the lethal blow. In the same fluid motion, he took his knife and stabbed the orc's foot. The creature yelled in agony and dropped to its knees. The moment the orc's eye level was even with his own, he shoved the pre-made flame canister directly into its mouth. The canister exploded almost instantly. Our boy began to celebrate his victory prematurely. Suddenly, the orc's fist, in a final act of defiance, landed a powerful punch that sent him flying back. He scrambled to his feet, knowing he should never have let his guard down. He watched as the orc took a step toward him, its upper body engulfed in flames, though it was clear the creature wouldn't survive its injuries. Our protagonist was sure he was about to be minced by the dying orc. Right then, his system notified him that his level had risen to 3 and he had just received 10 additional stat points. He also acquired the skill Will to Survive. Fueled by this sudden surge, he got up, muttering to himself that he couldn't handle this situation as he was. Wondering where the drop item was, he noticed a faint light glinting on his wrist. He looked down to find the drop item was a perception watch. He sighed in relief. It would have been a major hassle to search for the item in the heavy rain. He stepped closer to the now dead orc, his mind racing as he wondered what to do with the massive corpse. He recalled that the giant orc incident from the game lore was supposed to be under an information embargo. He then questioned if it was the right decision to act on this information, as the situation could easily spiral out of control. Thinking about what Mikkyong had said, that awakened were people who had played the game at least once, led him to one conclusion: there must be several thousand awakened individuals. Even if only a small minority were like in Hack, they would cause the collapse of social order and laws for personal gain, leading to widespread chaos. The most immediate problem was that he couldn't leave the dead orc where it was. It would transform into a bone creeper by the next day and begin harming people. A chilling thought crossed his mind. Why hadn't he considered that he, as an awakened, could still potentially become a zombie if infected by the spores? He was paralyzed, unable to decide on the right course of action. Being unable to reach a clear decision, he opened the portal while contemplating the few people who would likely survive the coming collapse. It felt certain that the orc, a creature of will and strength, deserved an orderly end rather than becoming a mindless monster. Our protagonist began digging a hole in the wet ground to bury the orc he had just killed. He quickly became exhausted and wondered how he would ever manage to drag the heavy corpse into the grave. His newly acquired skill, Will to Survive, activated, triggered by his extreme exhaustion, and compelled him to complete the task with a final burst of energy. The hero finished the gruesome job as fast as he possibly could, heaving the orc into its makeshift grave and feeling thankful for the skill's intervention. After that, he opened the portal and found himself back in his moving rental car. The physical and mental aftershocks of the battle and burial took time to subside before he could return to any regular activity. The next day, he woke up questioning if the clear weather outside was legitimate. According to his original plan, he should have already established a more robust defense line. He checked his phone, wondering if all remnants of the red orc were truly gone. He decided not to start any new major projects that day. The timing just didn't feel right. Instead, he turned his attention to the items that had been delivered in the early morning. Inside the box were most of the weapons he needed, though he noted he could only practically use one as a makeshift Indian war club. A few key items from his order were missing. He picked up a note left by the supplier explaining that some of the items were illegal to possess and had been seized by customs. As he was busy inspecting the weapons he had received, he heard another delivery van pull up. He shouted for them to just leave the packages at his front door. A knock followed, confusing him as to why the delivery person hadn't complied. He repeated his instruction and then opened the gate. It wasn't a delivery person, it was Mikkyong. She stood there, explaining that they hadn't met in a while and she wanted to discuss something important with him. She was holding a bag of food and asked if he wanted to eat some rabucky with. Now, with just 24 days left until the apocalypse, our protagonist was unable to believe that Mikkyong had visited his house. He grew visibly nervous and couldn't stop blushing. After she served the food, she told him to eat before it got cold and he complied. Once they finished eating, he asked what she wanted to talk about. She cut straight to the point, referencing his earlier comment about looking into Asura, and said she wanted to discuss some important information about it. This wasn't what our boy had expected. He had thought perhaps she wanted to date him. He assured himself that discussing apocalyptic preparations with her was the best option right now, as he would need reliable company during the tough times ahead. She quickly began to help clear the trash while our protagonist prepared for a more detailed discussion. He got his computer out. In a moment of decisive trust, he revealed to her that he was also awakened, reasoning that her finding out another way would be worse. He started by explaining in detail the Iron Death Plague and how traveling in a group larger than 6 people made them an easy target for zombie hordes. He emphasized that perception was a critical skill for survival, arguably the most important among all others. The ultimate goal, he stated, was simply to survive. As he was about to explain further, she stopped. She brought up what Owen Hawk had said about Kimbab Jojo receiving a lot of backlash and questioned why he wasn't sharing his information. Our protagonist didn't have a ready answer and asked her to take a guess. Her guess was that everyone had their reasons and circumstances often justified their action. Then our boy told her that he had rejected Hawk's offer to join him, and she wondered why. He took out his phone and played a recording of Hawk and his associates talking about kidnapping a girl who was playing hard to get. Hearing this made him furious. He turned to Mikko and informed her that this was the kind of behavior that would be revealed when the apocalypse arrived, the true colors of people. Our hero guided her not to trust anyone blindly, but she startled him by suggesting that they should form a party together. Our guy clenched his fist, unable to immediately blurt out an answer. One of his personal goals was to reach level 10 and unlock the in-game shop before the tutorial phase of the apocalypse ended, which created a significant problem. In Asura, there was a system where the rank of monsters that respawned changed according to the player's level. If she came along with him, she would be facing threats far beyond her capability and would be bound to die a terrible death. He nervously laughed, wondering aloud what she would do if he became a zombie. She assured him she would be fine and demonstrated her trait, Blink, by instantly teleporting to his dining table. She flexed her skill, explaining she only had to dodge him if he ever tried to bite her. He was surprised by her powerful ability but warned her sternly not to show it to anyone else. She simply replied that she trusted him. Brightly, she suggested that they would become a great team, as long as neither of them became zombies. A while later, he stood near a line of trees, thinking about how straightforward it had been to construct basic fences. The first step involved hammering support posts firmly into the ground. He then wrapped barbed wire around them, securing it tightly. After that, he installed infrared sensors in a few key locations, and the job was done. He looked over his work, praising himself and feeling sure he should at least earn one dexterity point for the manual labor. Zhang Ho began to walk back to his hideout. Having completed the mortar work and created a preliminary defense wall, he decided to start moving the remaining supply packages. He finished moving the boxes after a short while. As he was measuring what to do next, he suddenly felt a chill and sneeze. He realized that the other world was only going to get colder, and soon he would have to take shelter there permanently, meaning he needed to start thinking about countermeasures for the harsh environment. Our hero surveyed the rough entrance to his cave sanctuary and concluded that the simple curtain he had hung would not provide adequate security. He decided a solid, proper gate was necessary. With every step he took, his mental checklist of essential tasks seemed to grow longer and more daunting. Later, he stopped by a woodworking shop to commission the gate's production and purchase other necessary supply. On his way back, he methodically checked the locations of various stores and warehouses, mentally cataloging which ones he would target for supplies during the critical 5-hour window before the Iron Death Plague began its corrosive spread. As he was engrossed in making this list, he was stopped by Hyung Jun Hyung, a gym director he hadn't seen in a long time. Hyung was a divorced man with a young daughter. Our protagonist immediately read the troubled expression on his face. Hyung, however, brushed off his own concerns and instead commented on how our boy's body was visibly getting back into shape. When our protagonist asked him what was wrong, Hyung replied as if it were obvious. He was deeply upset because the world was going to end. The protagonist was surprised that Hyung knew about the impending apocalypse. Hyung wondered if our protagonist believed it was real. He explained that he hadn't believed it himself until a friend of his suddenly began to levitate, demonstrating the superpower he had been granted as an awakened. The protagonist lied, claiming he had not awakened. The gym guy sighed sadly, admitting he hadn't awakened either. He revealed that his levitating friend was now heading to a broadcasting station, planning to monetize his new abilities. Hyung gestured for our protagonist to sit beside him, and our guy realized that soon the existence of the awakened would become public knowledge. Hyung then changed the topic to something bizarre that had happened, the Uido shootout. Seong Ho was shocked. He hadn't watched the news that morning. Hyung told him to look it up, but when our protagonist tried, he found the posts and videos were being taken down instantly. The media was now being actively controlled. Hyung explained the follow-up news, how authorities were trying to cover up the incident by labeling the shooter as a military deserter. The entire shootout area had been closed off to the public, accessible only to the army and police. Suddenly, our protagonist got up, made a quick excuse to leave, and began to run back home. A major shootout had occurred right after the orc incident. This sequence of events made him suspect the government was involved, as their reaction to suppress information was too swift and obvious. He rushed to his computer, opened a file, and clicked on a video. He was surprised to see that many people online seemed to know the exact timing of the precursor phenomenon. He had personally dealt with the orc, and the shootout had happened simultaneously. Overthinking the situation, he wondered if someone had leaked information to the government early on, initiating action starting with the first precursor phenomenon. Perhaps the government hadn't taken a public offensive stance because they lacked individuals with powerful offensive traits. He wasn't sure who the leak was, but he felt certain there was someone influential behind the government pulling the strings. Sean Ho wondered who that person could be. His research led him to 3 veteran players from the game's history. After a lot of deliberation, he eliminated the game's creators from his suspect list. His reasoning was that if the creators were the villains orchestrating this real-world game and were backed by the government, they would never have allowed him to kill the orc unimpeded. He sketched out the faces of the 3 biggest suspects. He wondered if survivor number 1 was among them. If his theory was correct, he wouldn't need to share information with the government himself. He leaned back in his chair, wondering if survivor number 1 was someone he actually knew. He missed his veteran friends from the game and decided to trust his instincts for now. Besides, sharing information wouldn't stop the coming catastrophe, so he resolved not to intervene yet. 2 days later, his newly constructed door was installed, and his underground pantry was fully stocked and ready. The first phase of his shelter was complete. He decided to install 2 logistic trays and drill through a wall for wiring, but found there was significantly less space than he had initially imagined. The basement waterproofing was finished, a project he had been working on bit by bit. He walked away, deciding he would figure out the spatial issues once his body had fully healed from his recent ordeal. Phase 2 involved a critical task, mapping the surrounding area with his drone. With his VR set on and the drone airborne, he observed his shelter from a midpoint and began exploring the terrain. The drone reconnaissance revealed snowfields to the northwest and an ocean to the south. The ocean appeared to be free of monsters and rich with potential prey, so he decided to set up traps to catch fish. He carefully examined the valley to study the ecosystem around his shelter. Suddenly, his drone feed showed the spot where he had buried the owlbear, but the corpse was missing. He wondered if a big furball had eaten. He withheld final judgment because he noticed many footprints around the site, most of them belonging to orcs, which made the situation even more suspicious. He measured the distance between the valley and his shelter to be roughly 1.5 kilometers, realizing his sanctuary was in a more dangerous location than he had initially assumed. Knowing that goblins were also active nearby, he decided to recall the drone to avoid losing the valuable asset. He managed to sketch out a detailed map and identified the types of animals present in the forest. His next task was to physically scout all those areas himself, starting with the closest swamp to see if farming was feasible. Suddenly, his infrared sensors went off. He stepped outside and identified goblin footprints imprinted on the ground. He had been anticipating this, and it created a perfect opportunity for him. He wondered if his recently increased perception stat was the reason he could detect them so easily. Even the smallest sounds were now super clear to him. After a short while, he was able to spot a group of goblins without revealing his own position. It created the perfect ambush angle. He pulled out his spear and arrow, launching an attack that struck a goblin directly in the head, killing it instantly. The remaining goblins, enraged by their comrade's death, charged toward him to attack. However, he swiftly dispatched them as if they were easy prey, killing 4 in quick succession before turning to face the remaining 4. He found himself surrounded, but in a calculated move, he pulled something from his pocket that instantly caused the goblins to drop to their knees paralyzed. As they knelt helpless, our protagonist took his knife and methodically chopped their heads off. He had exploited the goblins' inherent exhaustion to win a battle that even he found almost too easy. Now only 21 days remained until the apocalypse. While digging graves for the goblins, our boy felt utterly tired, but suddenly his will to survive trait triggered, flooding his body with a renewed sense of efficiency. He realized the skill wasn't completely useless after all. After finishing the burials, he turned his attention to the loot he had collected. He first gathered the guaca fruit, which provided a major boost and restored his strength. He also found a large quantity of vegetable oil in the loot, which made him suspect a harvestable source was nearby. When he looked inside the pouch of the head goblin, he was surprised to find a live toad inside. The toad was a vibrant blue color, making our boy wonder why they would carry a live specimen instead of a dead one. Suddenly, the toad began to emit a peculiar smell, and our protagonist quickly realized it was the source of the paralysis poison the goblins used. Instantly, he decided he had to raise this toad no matter what. Not only did he find the toad incredibly cute, but by extracting its poison, he could potentially build a resistance by injecting small, controlled amounts into his body. The paralysis poison would also make hunting significantly easier. He decided to name the toad Jodok and resolved to feed it well. His system promptly notified him that the toad was now registered as his property. He wondered if this was a hidden game mechanic that had carried over into reality. He began to overthink and overanalyze the implication. After this discovery, he resumed his exploration, frequently using his dimensional gate to go back and forth as he finally completed the reorganization of his supply. He immediately began searching the surroundings more thoroughly, and to his surprise, found a spring that he had missed during his drone survey. He examined the water and concluded it was ordinary and safe. He was even more surprised to discover another potential hideout near his shelter, located right behind the spring. There, he found a guaca tree and vegetable oil buds. Our protagonist harvested a substantial amount of guaca fruits and oil buds. To ensure he could find this valuable location again, he left marks on the trees along the route before heading back. At his apartment, he began caring for his new pet, Jodok. He was raising the toad in his second-floor apartment for the time being, as he couldn't leave Jodok in the otherworldly hideout where it might die. Beyond pet care, there were more pressing tasks. The most time-consuming was making the healing ointment. He had accidentally produced far too much. He couldn't give the excess to Mikyon because she was a fellow awakener and might ask too many questions, so he decided to give it to Hyung. At Hyung's gym, our protagonist drank a protein drink and then presented the ointment to his friend, who was curious about what it was. Our guy explained that he had bought too much and that it was supposedly good for treating wounds. Hyung jokingly asked if he was getting into multi-level marketing, which our hero denied. Still, Hyung was grateful for the ointment and for the Sura-related information our protagonist had sent him. Our boy, in turn, thanked Hyung for informing him about the shooting incident. Xiang-ho then observed that the gym was unusually quiet. Hyung explained that everyone had gone off to make their own plans after the broadcasting guy had spread the information he knew. Now they were planning to make the gym itself their base. Our hero warned him that a large group of people would be a magnet for danger, but Hyung, loyal to a fault, refused to abandon his members. When Hyung asked about Zhang Ho's own plans, our protagonist brushed the question off. Suddenly they heard a scream from outside that sounded familiar. He looked down from the building and saw Mikkyong on the ground. Both he and Hyung rushed to her, demanding to know what had happened. She explained that she had been attacked but hadn't been able to see her assailant. Hyung instantly ran outside to check the area, despite our protagonist's attempts to stop him from rushing into a potential ambush. Meanwhile, our boy stayed with Mikkyong as she elaborated, saying everything had gone dark in front of her eyes and she couldn't process what had happened. Hearing this, a chill ran down our hero's spine as he realized the attackers were already making their move. He urged her to use her blink ability instantly whenever something like that happened again. He assured her he would send her a self-defense kit soon and stressed that she needed to be extremely careful from now on. Only 20 days were left until the apocalypse. Our protagonist recalled a famous meme from the game's past. If 5 people gather, one of them is bound to be useless. He knew that trolls existed everywhere in the world, and Sura was no exception. The game had patches to deal with player interference, and while the developers would answer reports, they never seemed to actually catch the trolls. The game world of Sura has a problem with dishonest players known as trollers. These individuals will join a team and pretend to be a normal helpful member. Once the group trusts them, they lead everyone into a zone filled with powerful monsters. This results in the entire team being killed. They often target new players with acts of kindness. After gaining a beginner's trust, they betray and kill them to take all of their possessions. Trollers have used many different methods to cause fighting within a party. This toxic behavior caused the game, which was never very popular, to completely collapse within a single year. The number of active users fell to just 4. This low number was only achieved because a team led by a user named Sean Ho managed to remove the remaining trollers. The main character wonders why he is explaining all of this background information. He then gives a short summary of everything he has discovered. The various online communities for Awakeners have all joined together after a violent incident called the Uido Shootout. These combined groups are not just sharing knowledge and data. They are also actively planning and organizing secret plans. He stops talking in the middle of his sentence when he makes a new discovery. He finds that people are also recording and selling videos of his own activities. As he continues to browse the website, he learns something shocking about a former teammate. He discovers that a player named Dagism was secretly a troller. He is stunned to see a video thumbnail featuring Dagism. The title of the video claims that Dagism was carried by a skilled player named Kimbup. The protagonist Ho now suspects that this troller is using a cleverly edited video to trick and lure new victims. Surprisingly, he feels a sense of admiration and claps for Daju. He acknowledges that Daju's thinking is very smart. He stretches his body and makes a decision. He needs to train much more to properly deal with people like that. For the next 13 days, he uses every moment of his free time to practice. He studies an online channel called Miti, which focuses on survival skill. From it, he learns how to use various weapons and techniques that are effective in real combat situations. During this same period, he also watches videos about monster attacks and their hideout. He notices a serious flaw in many popular strategies and weapons. They completely fail to consider the threat of the wire disease. After finishing his 13 days of training, Zhang Ho is finally ready to select his main weapon. He needs a weapon that will still be usable if the wire disease affects him. It also must be effective in fights against other people and strong enough to eliminate monsters. He looks inside his bag of tools for option. He sees an Indian war club, a wooden slingshot, some ochre clay beads, and a handmade stone axe. Unfortunately, not one of these items perfectly meets all of his requirements. His first choice to test is the slingshot. It is a tool with high utility in many different situations. However, the ochre clay beads he uses for ammunition are ambiguous because their hitting power is very weak. Next, he decides to try the Indian War Club. He thinks that once the wire disease is accepted as a fact, there is no reason to worry about it. The simplest method to kill a zombie is to use a blunt weapon to smash the skull and destroy the spores living inside. He remembers that the first weapon he planned to buy after reaching level 10 was a blunt weapon type item, specifically an ebony wood club. That memory is why it was so important for him to raise his skill with blunt objects. But now he is not sure if the Indian War Club is a good weapon for fighting people. He believes it is ambiguous because it would be very difficult for him to confront a psychic awakener using only this club. He knows that within the rules of survival life, killing another human player rewards 50 points. A special rule called the murder system exists to prevent players from abusing this. If a player is registered as a murderer, they are forced into death matches with other nearby players. This system discourages player killing despite the point reward because of the heavy penalty. Meanwhile, he practices on a training dummy and completely destroys it using his Indian War Club. He makes a decision to avoid any players who engage in that kind of combat until he has finished collecting better items and skill. After his hard training session, he wipes the sweat from his forehead. He starts to make a plan to completely dismantle the store, but he stops speaking when he hears a new sound. It is the sound of a wolf coming from from very close by. He is shocked and wonders if an animal has been injured near his hideout. He soon finds the wolf. It is much bigger than a normal wolf, large enough that a person could ride on it. The system interface identifies it as a gray wolf. As he looks more closely, he sees that the wolf is not breathing. He questions whether this is a lone wolf or if it came near his hideout after being attacked by something else. To get more information, he begins to carefully check the wolf's body for injuries. Without any warning, a young wolf cub hits him hard on his back. Seong-ho understands the situation. The dead wolf is the mother of this little cub. The cub has placed itself between him and its mother's body to protect. He feels confused because he cannot use physical force to separate the little wolf from its dead mother. He goes to get a shovel. His decision is to bury the dead wolf as quickly as possible. As he starts digging a hole, he thinks about the possible dangers. If the dead wolf was a monster, it will transform into a creature called a bone creeper. If it was a normal animal, its corpse will attract more monsters to the area. After some time passes, the hole is completely dug. The young wolf cub is now sleeping peacefully beside its mother. This sad scene reminds the main character of his own younger self and a dog named Mongchai that he raised when he was a child. Next, he gently picks up the little wolf. He explains to it that its mother will be sleeping in this place forever. He adds that the cub can come and visit its mother whenever it wants to. He plans to make a special small door for a dog in the main door of his hideout. Then Seon-ho gives the wolf a piece of meat. He makes a promise that he will make sure it never starves while it is growing up. He asks for its help in return using its amazing sense of smell. He asks the cub if it agrees to this arrangement. The small wolf answers him by making a soft, happy sound. Then the main character gives it a name, Dingo, and gently pats its head. A window from the system appears with a notification. It states that he has successfully achieved communication with the gray wolf. This gray wolf named Dingo is now considered his personal property. With that event completed, there are only 19 days remaining until the apocalypse arrives. Zion-ho is very busy with the training of Dingo. He instructs the wolf to repeat the actions he has just taught it. When our main boy calls for a paw, Dingo obediently places its paw on its owner's hand. Then the wolf runs. When instructed, it sits down, it lies down, and it stays quiet following every single command our hero gives to it. Finally, he throws a large piece of bone high into the air, and Dingo successfully catches it with a high leap. The protagonist feels very satisfied. He notes mentally how quickly the wolf learns new things, likely because it is originally from another world. He reflects on its excellent scent tracking skill. In his mind, he considers Dingo to be a bundle of luck and a true blessing. He shows care for his adorable companion by giving it a kiss and starts to say something else, but his phone rings. As Seon-ho picks up the phone, he sees a new message from his friend Hyun. The message suggests that he should search the word levitation on the web. Later, our hero finds an online article about a person who is being called the first superhuman. This person claims that zombies and monsters will soon appear and bring great disaster. That article has now reached the #1 rank. In the comments section below the article, people are mostly skeptical. They believe the television channel that broadcast this did it only to get better ratings. He notes that there are many people who know nothing about the coming eras of change, but the awakeners in the comments section are clearly very alarmed. He finds it amusing how some people get upset when very little information is shared, and others get angry when the information they already know becomes widespread knowledge. Next, our protagonist wonders how the government will react to all of this. He is aware of people holding public rallies about the shock of recent events and the emergence of superpowers, but he snaps himself out of that line of thought. He decides firmly not to get involved with such matters, though he implies that the government will eventually be forced to act once the second major omen, the Hobgoblin event, occurs. Shang-ho decides he will not waste a single moment. He tells Dingo that starting today they will begin their exploration of other worlds. Deep down, our boy knows that thorough preparation is the only real solution, and Dingo seems very eager for the new activity. Later, they enter the portal world together, and Sing-ho reflects on his main reasons for choosing interdimensional exploration with Dingo. He lets Dingo sniff a small pouch and then orders it to go and find the pouch's contents. The first reason for this type of exploration is to prepare for the upcoming Hobgoblin event. He needs Dingo to properly learn and remember the specific scent of goblin. Meanwhile, Dingo barks loudly, having found the piece of flesh hidden in some bushes, and our hero feels proud that it managed to track the item down using only a lingering scent. The second reason is to test if Dingo can stay calm during live combat and continue to follow commands. So he gives a hand signal, and the wolf immediately dashes forward with great speed and precision. Dingo successfully hunts a rabbit that is hiding in the grass, and our protagonist praises it highly. The third reason for this exploration is to confirm whether hunting for food is possible in the other world. Seong-ho approaches Dingo to inspect its prey, observing the dead rabbit and noting its unusually strong claws and large size. Afterwards, our boy and his little wolf continue their journey. Moving ahead, he wonders what Dingo's natural abilities would look like if they were written as statistics. He decides to head toward a nearby valley to verify this for himself. Then a system window appears notifying him that Dingo's health stat has increased by 1 point. Remembering that his own health stat when he was Kimbafo was 170, our hero is impressed by how fast Dingo is growing and becoming stronger. Suddenly, Dingo begins to cough, and our protagonist rushes over to offer it water. He reminds his partner not to go alone into the deep woods. Dingo drinks the water while our boy spots a large green pepper growing nearby and wonders if the wolf ate one of those. The system reveals the plant is called a bull pepper. Seong-ho is pleased to find such a useful item in the woods and praises Dingo, promising plenty of good treats for it later. He starts digging carefully to harvest the bull pepper plant. Next, they set out for their final hunt of the day. Both of them sit on rocks at the edge of a shallow stream. This time, Dingo does not detect any unusual scents or presences in the area. Deep down, our boy reflects that red trout are not classified as monsters. They do not give any points or special items when caught. However, he believes it is essential for young Dingo to gain general experience, which is valuable by itself. After a successful session of hunting red trout, our protagonist decides to finish his preparations for Phase 2 and then return home. The following day, his entire restaurant building is demolished. The manager of the demolishing company tells our hero to contact them within 3 days if there are any issues with the repairs. He thanks the manager sincerely for starting work so early in the morning. Taking a deep breath, he feels a bit sad to see the place where he worked completely destroyed, but he knows it was a necessary action. As he steps inside the ruined structure, Sei-ho assumes that after the apocalypse begins, people who do not turn into zombies will likely loot all the stores. He admits honestly that he would do the same thing in their position, so he feels he has no right to complain. As he starts cleaning up the debris, his friend Hung appears behind him, observing the empty room. Hyung mentions that he has also done a similar thing, leaving only the bare minimum of equipment behind. When our boy wonders aloud why Hyung is there, Hung snaps his fingers against Xiang-ho's forehead. He is angry because our hero left the previous day without saying a single word. Now Hyung says he came just to check if Shang-ho was even alive. Meanwhile, Dingo watches Hyung's every move with cold, untrusting eyes. Hyung wonders aloud if Zhang-ho always had a dog, but he explains that his previous dog is long gone. He adds that this is his new pet, and Hung calls the wolf adorable. Then Zion-ho asks again why he is here, and Hyung repeats that he only came to check on him. Our hero does not believe that story, so Hyung shares another reason for his visit. He admits he was genuinely worried, but also reveals that he has found the people behind the recent attack on their friend Mikko. With that revelation, only 17 days remain until the apocalypse arrives. Sitting down together with Hyung, Ziang-ho learns new information. The party was organized by a man named Kim Kaol-jun, who is known for always wearing a hat. This party is actually specifically targeting Mikko. Hyung also mentions that the tow truck driver, which our boy strongly dislikes, is involved with their party as well. He points toward the mountains in front of them and asks if the area near the base of the mountain is where the city's redevelopment project halted. He adds that their group's hideout is situated there. However, our protagonist is curious how Hung was able to discover all this secret information, and Hung explains that the various clues simply lined up logically. He states that Han Jinong, the man who can levitate, had recently appeared on a variety show, and Hung had asked him about it direct. Hanjin revealed he had met with Cha Jun's group before, but their members were all very unpleasant people, so Hanjin refused to stay with them due to strongly conflicting personality. After the incident with Mikkyong, all the female members began to leave the party. When people asked them why they were leaving, the women simply said they had received better offers from other Awakener groups. Hyung asks Sei-ho for his opinion on the situation. Our hero replies that unlike Mikkyong, the other women were probably tricked into joining the other parties. Hyung then shares surprising news. He reveals that their own party is now down to only 4 members, including himself. This information stuns our protagonist. He clearly remembers the party had 20 members only a few days ago. Hyung does not give more details, but our boy knows that now their small group has only 2 Awakeners. Shang-ho has a hard time understanding this. He recalls how their group had done many favors for those members who still decided to leave. Yet Hyung remains calm and collected. He tells our protagonist that this is just the way things are. Those people were only thinking about their own safety and survival. Furthermore, Hyung says he is worried about his young daughter Jiyeon. He is debating whether or not he should contact his ex-wife about her. Our boy keeps his expression neutral. He knows that Hyung's situation is different from his own. He wants to know if his own thinking is correct. He decides to ask Hyung a question that has been bothering him. Our protagonist wonders if the apocalypse really happens and people start to threaten Hyung, what would he do? Before he can finish his sentence, Hyung interrupts him. Hyung insists he would not hesitate to kill those people. Hyung says he normally has a principle against hurting others, but in a major disaster with no laws, there would be no other option. He believes that in such terrible times there is no room for evil people to survive. Then Hyung asks curiously why Xiang-ho would ask such a question. He notes that it does not seem like something our hero would usually ask. Our boy does not give a real answer. At that exact moment, a loud yell for help is heard. The sound is coming from our hero's cell phone. Hung wonders if it is the sound of a lost child, but Xing-ho checks his map and quickly asks Hyung to look after Dingo for a short time. In another location, Mikong is surrounded by bad guys. It appears she has sent a distress signal. The enforcer known as the tow truck driver Anan and a man called Hawkmock Mikyoyuang. They ask her why she is causing such a scene and demand that she come down from where she is standing. In response, Mikyoyuang stands at the very edge of a rooftop. She shouts back that she already refused their offer, but they kept chasing her. She demands to know why they are doing this to her. Anan urges her to reconsider their proposal, but Kim Zial and Ma Jong step forward. They insist on handling the situation their own way. They point out that since they are in a redevelopment area, no one will come to help Mikyoyuang. Kimchi tells her not to waste her energy. He reminds her that they all have special traits. Then he begins a loud countdown. Meanwhile, our boy is preparing his weapons while hiding in a nearby alley. When Kimchi reaches the count of 2, our hero uses his slingshot to hit Kim Call. On the count of 3, Kim Chaeol is struck by a projectile. All the group members are confused. They try to figure out who is attacking them. Suddenly, our protagonist appears wearing a helmet. He steps forward and strikes one of the members. He debates for a second whether or not to reveal his identity. Using his Indian war club, Sing Ho hits one man hard. He then immediately attacks another member. This person emits a strange black energy. Our hero suspects this man has a vision-blocking trait. But Zan Ho is still able to strike him successfully. Now our hero is breathing heavily from the effort. When he looks at Mikkyong, she shouts a warning for him to watch out. He turns around and sees Kim Shiel running toward him with a baseball bat. The bat hits our hero and damages his helmet. Zion Ho is shocked by the powerful force behind the attack. At the same time, Kimchi realizes who our protagonist, but our boy is deep in thought. He recognizes that Kimchi's offensive trait is extremely powerful even in its early stages. Kimchi makes a vow of revenge against our protagonist. His group members stand up to back him up. They are determined to use their full strength even though they are not awakened. Anan charges at our hero with electricity sparking around him. He mocks our protagonist as he gets closer. Xiang Ho is unsure what to do. His opponent is showing off all his skill. He wonders if he should use his dimensional gate to escape. Just as Anan is about to strike, Dingo appears out of nowhere. The wolf bites Anan's arm hard. Then Hyung steps out from an alley. He asks the group if this violent behavior is really appropriate in broad daylight. He suggests the group should leave now if they do not want more trouble. He states that he is calling the police. All the group members decide it is best to retreat for the moment. Hung comments that they look weak but still act so arrogantly. Next, Mikkyong comes down from the rooftop. She immediately runs to our hero and grabs his head, checking if he is all right. She notes that his helmet is badly cracked. Hyung offers our boy a piggyback ride home. Seeing how worried they both are, Xiang Ho's thoughts flash back to his old comrades from the online game. When Mikkyong suggests a visit to the hospital, our protagonist turns his face away. He insists he is perfectly fine. He then asks Hyung if they can bring Mikkyong into their party officially. Hyung says it is not a problem as long as Mikkyong has no objection. She happily agrees to join. Our hero leaves quickly, saying he has some things he needs to do. Hyung and Mikkyong are left behind wondering why he is acting so strangely. After returning home, our hero concentrates on controlling his emotion. He begins planning for the second stage of his preparation. His abrupt departure was unavoidable. Seeing Hyung and Mikkyong together made him feel like he could trust them with the secret of his abilities. But the decision to leave had already been made. To make the most of his dimensional gate, our boy must level up quickly. He needs to focus on gaining new skills and farming for items. The phrase "crush them with item power" echoes in his mind more strongly after his fight with the Mountain Gang. He realizes that if he prepares for the apocalypse as he planned, there will be a 3-level gap or more. This means monsters that respawn near him will be stronger. It will also make it harder for him to team up with his 2 companions. He keeps working until he finishes installing a wood-burning stove in his hideout. He knows this will help him sleep well during cold nights. Dingo also enjoys the stove. The wolf sleeps soundly right next to it. Now our protagonist has just a few more things to install when they arrive. After that, his initial hideout setup will be nearly complete. Determined to finish, he decides to pull an all-nighter. With that effort, there are now 16 days left until the apocalypse arrives. A news anchor provides an update on the asteroid observed earlier. According to the report, the HSA has announced that an asteroid named Yun Jambi has entered the midpoint of the solar system. The HSA is closely monitoring its trajectory. The report states the meteorite was split into pieces by Jupiter's gravity. In response, the head of the Meteorite Observation Department, Thomas Chandler, informs the public that the 2 fragments named Yunjambi Alpha and Yunjambi Beta have no chance of approaching Earth. However, Seong Ho remembers a crucial fact. On day 5, just 5 days before the apocalypse, Yunjambi Beta was the first fragment to fall. It landed near a Russian ship in the ocean. The resulting massive tsunami swept the ship ashore at Gamcheon port. This event was how the zombies first appeared in Korea. The news anchor continues reporting on the Uido shooting incident. President Jang Wake has not left his residence for an entire week. This has prompted opposition party leaders to issue a joint statement. They agree to hold a hearing about the president's absence. Some people are now saying this situation is connected to the rumors about awakeners and the impending disaster. Listening to all this, our boy admits to himself that it really is the end of the world. He thinks it is a good thing that the media is finally showing interest in these matters. He concludes that it will now be more difficult for awakeners to commit crimes openly. Next, he decides to check the online community's reaction on his laptop. As our protagonist scrolls through the comment section, he sees that people have shared very strong opinions about the situation. By pure chance, he spots a comment from a user named My Dream. He wonders if this person has been active on the site all along. My Dream was a player known for being very friendly to beginners. Seon Ho's group had played with him a few times in the past. My Dream's great ambition was to build a strong bunker for the disaster. Our hero thinks that if he did not have his portal ability, he might have been tempted to join My Dream's group. He decides he will not enter into any contract unless his veteran friends from the game also join My Dream, but he bookmarks My Dream's comment for later reference. After closing his laptop, our protagonist looks forward to building his second shelter. The next day, Seon Ho stands in front of his hideout. He realizes it is possible to pull 2 all-nighters in a row. He feels completely exhausted, but seeing his completed exterior wall gives him new energy. Now it is time to figure out how to use the electricity electricity generated by his solar panel. Simply put, there are several wiring steps required to make the electricity compatible with his electronic devices. Luckily, when our boy puts his phone on the newly wired charger, it works perfectly. He raises his arms in delight. He announces to himself that he has now built the foundation for survival in this world. For the first time in a long while, he feels a rush of dopamine from his success. The day before, he had also collected luminous stones and ignition stone. After some further digging, he found a mineral harder and sharper than obsidian called emeris. Although it is currently useless for his immediate needs, he still considers it better than having nothing. He decides he will install LED lights later. But before sleeping, he needs to organize all the food supplies in the basement. Suddenly, a loud and angry noise from Dingo grabs his full attention. Rushing outside, Seong-ho finds Dingo facing off against several maimed wolves. He recognizes these creatures as a type of monster from the game Asura. He wonders why these creatures, which usually live in high-altitude areas, are here near his hideout. Observing Dingo's intense anger, our hero suspects these might be the very wolves that killed Dingo's mother. He tries to calm Dingo down, but deep down he knows he cannot defeat all the wolves with his current strength. If he turns to fetch a better weapon, he risks exposing his back to an attack. Such an attack could be fatal. Therefore, our protagonist decides to focus on making the alpha wolf leave. He knows the rest of the pack will likely follow their leader. He observes the wolves' super cautious behavior. He notices they only move when the alpha acts first. Next, he considers whether the wolves can coordinate a group attack. He also notes that these wolves are extremely sensitive to strange scent. Fortunately, Seong-ho has a can of pepper spray with him. If he can spray it directly on the alpha, he will be able to drive it away from his shelter. Sweat trickles down his face as he considers the great risk. He could be attacked before he can act. He wonders if there is a way to distract the alpha and then strike with the spray. Suddenly, a plan comes to his mind. He believes it is logically possible. Determined to defend the hideout he built with his own hands, our boy braces himself for action. He instantly throws a knife at the alpha wolf, but the animal dodges the attack. The alpha then leaps directly at our hero. But when it gets very close, Seong-ho suddenly opens his dimensional portal. Seizing this chance, he sprays the animal directly in the face. The alpha loses its composure completely. Then our protagonist drives his knife deep into the wolf's eye. With their leader badly injured, the rest of the wolf pack retreats into the forest. Our hero sits down on the ground. He has narrowly escaped death. Dingo comes over to care for him. Seong-ho pats Dingo's head in appreciation for its help. He promises Dingo that he will fully avenge its mother in the future. With that dangerous event over, only 15 days remain until the apocalypse arrives.